Hello, everybody. We are here talking about the actuarial profession from a global perspective. We are here today with Andy Peterson. He is member of the Society of Actuaries, and the society is on United States. And well, we are here to talk about the actual science. And first of all, thank you very much to be here with us, talking to our audience and to the Brazilian and from another part of the world. Actually, we are in the internet. We can talk with a lot of people in many countries, and thank you very much to be here. And I have to say thank you to the people who are here watching us right now, but to the people who will watch us later. So thank you very much to the public to be here, and thank you, Andy, to be here talk with us.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the invitation, Fabio. It's nice to meet you in person after we corresponded via email. So appreciate the opportunity and the invitation.
Okay, going to the first question, I would like to know, could you tell us a little bit about your activities at the Society of Actuaries?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe as brief introduction. So I am an actuary by background. Um, I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries. So I'm kind of in an unusual situation where I'm both an employee and also a member of the Society of Actuaries. And I've been with the society for over 15 years, and in the last five or so, I've been working as our managing director for international activities for the Society of Actuaries. So in that context, really my role is about overseeing what we do as an SOA for the SOA outside of the US, and how we better serve our members who are in places around the world, whether in Asia or Latin America or the Middle East or wherever. And also at the same time, while trying to serve our members, also trying to help the development of the actuarial profession and support the growth of the actuarial profession. And ultimately, from our perspective at the SOA, that means that we hope to find people who will be interested in taking our SOA credentialing exams and working their way through becoming a member of the Society of Actuaries. So, um, but ultimately, it's about serving the profession and helping the profession grow around the world. So that's maybe a really quick summary. I certainly can go into more about that, but um, that's a quick summary from what I'm doing.
Great. And talking about the aquarium profession, how it's growing worldwide, and in general, how is the professional profile that the companies are internationally demanding?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the profession is growing worldwide. I mean, it certainly depends on the market in terms of the level of growth. There's a lot of the profession is in certain markets is quite mature. So if you look at North America and US and Canada, across a lot of Europe, the actuarial profession has been there for many years. There's associations that date back 100 plus years. So in that context, and in most of those markets, the profession, there's growth, but it's relatively low growth, maybe more like sort of GDP kind of growth, 2, 3, 4% sort of things, at least in similar to what those markets are experiencing overall. Um, but then there are other markets, of course, where there is rapid growth in the profession, and that, of course, tends to be the markets where it doesn't have a strong history or there isn't a long history of the actual profession. Um, So you can look in a place like um, in the Middle East, for example. There are certain markets in the Middle East where there have been actuaries for quite a while, but other markets where there haven't. And so I was just a little over a week ago was traveling in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is a market where there hasn't been a long history of a profession, and so there is rapid growth there. A lot of the work right now for actuarial work is done by consultants in the insurance industry, and yet there's a desire and a strong push by the Saudi central bank, the regulator. Actually, it's as of last week there's a new entity called the Insurance Authority there. The regulator is very intent on creating a robust actuarial profession. So they're requiring all insurance companies to have an in-house actuarial department, to hire local Saudis into those roles, to have Saudis as the chief actuaries eventually in those firms, or the appointed actuaries over a period of time. And so as we look at it from the Society of Actuaries standpoint, we've seen a strong growth in the number of candidates we have in that market, and we expect to see the growth of credentialed actuaries there as well. So again, I mean, that's an example. There's other markets across Africa where there's much stronger growth, and even some in Latin America, and across Asia as well, where there is just again, there hasn't been a strong history of the profession, and so there's kind of catching up to where they would be versus other developed markets. So that's kind of the maybe a high level. I don't know. Were there other elements of the question that you still wanted me to cover? Sorry, I can't hear you.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I would like to know, really, generally, how are the main characteristics of the actual market in each continent?
Yeah, I mean, I guess generally it's always you always have to be careful about making generalities, right, and stereotypes. But in general, as I said, in North America, the actuarial market is quite well developed. Maybe not growing as quickly as it has in past years, but still solid. Similarly, I think that would be probably the case in Europe. In Asia, it's kind of, I think it depends on where you are in Asia. So there's markets that are fairly saturated. Again, that I would say more similar to the U.S. Maybe looking at markets like Hong Kong and Taiwan and Singapore, versus other markets that they're still experiencing fairly strong growth in places like China and Vietnam, Indonesia, and some of those places. Even the profession is relatively new in places like Cambodia and Laos. If you go into other markets, South Asia, again, there's a long history of a profession in places like Pakistan and India. But there are unique characteristics of the profession in India where due to the significant amount of offshoring work and outsourcing work that's done in India, there's probably more people working actuarial jobs in the offshoring industry than there actually are in the domestic insurance industry in India. So that creates kind of an interesting dynamic in that market. And then, going across to Africa, there's a couple markets where the profession is quite well developed. South Africa is one of those. And then other markets, there's still a lot of development that exists, or opportunities for development. In your area, Fabio, you probably know better than I do, but my impression of Latin America is that it again is a little bit varied on the markets. There's certain countries like Brazil and Argentina and Mexico that have a fairly long history of actuaries, mostly through a university-based approach to credentialing. And then some other markets where there hasn't been much of an actual profession historically. So Colombia, Chile, Peru, where it's relatively new. And so it's kind of, again, kind of two different disparate areas. So you can't, I don't know, I don't think you can really generalize on say, Latin America overall, because it really varies depending on the country.
And to be an actuary, a person needs to have a lot of skills. Could you make a briefly kind of profile that the actuaries from Latin America, for example, but the actuaries from Latin America normally have other profile that the Europeans have, Africans, Asians. Actually, is that possible to do?
Yeah, that's pretty tough. I mean, I think it's, the role of actuaries, again, I mean, there's a sort of a, at least as I see it, a common core of expertise that hopefully we all have, and we expect, to the extent there's similarities in the programs. I mean, certainly, the SOA's got our credentialing pathway. You have the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. You have the Casualty Actuarial Society. Those are all institutions that have fairly global reach in what they do. And so there's a lot of similarities, at least at the basic level, of what we expect actuaries to know. And certainly there's a, International Actuarial Association has kind of a syllabus that they recommend that all actuarial associations follow. So we do, there is sort of a core sense of what actuaries need to know and that sort of thing. I think what I see is the differences maybe is more around types of work and the products. So that really drives maybe the skill sets that exist in different markets. So again, in the more developed markets where actuaries have been around for 50, 100 years, you tend to see much more specialization of the actuaries. So if I talk to an actuary in the U.S., they may say, well, I'm a pension actuary, or I'm a life actuary. They'll get even more specialized. Well, I do pricing. I'm a financial reporting actuary. I'm a tax actuary. So they're very, very sort of specialized skill sets. At least you often hear that. Whereas when you're working in other markets, Latin America, Middle East, Africa, again, where there isn't sort of that deep history of the profession, then you have actuaries that are much more generalists. So their experience is working across a number of different types of insurance products, and perhaps not as deep in any particular area. So they will do, they might do some work in the life area. They may do some general insurance work. They may do some health related work, or so working across practice areas where again in say a US or European context, that would be quite fairly unusual for somebody to be moving across those particular areas. So there's a flexibility, I guess, that's a little bit different, and it's really, I guess, driven by necessity of what the different markets require and that sort of thing that really drives sort of the skill sets that might be unique in specific markets or needed in specific markets.
Okay. Another question, still talking about some important things that an actuary has to have to be a good professional around the world. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of the soft skills, the ability to communicate concepts, and the good business acumen? How, in your opinion, how someone can get or improve these abilities?
Yeah, so I mean, that's certainly important. My view is that I mean, yes, yes, you need to be technically competent, and that's an important part of the being an actuary. I mean, that's the critical part of being an actuary. Honestly, if you're not technically competent, then you can't do your work. But at some level, and yeah, that's a lot of what the testing and the credentialing process is that, say, a Society of Actuaries or other credentialing organizations are trying to determine. Do you have that technical expertise? Um, but at some point, that becomes sort of assumed. If you're working as an actuary, if you're credentialed as an actuary, that you have that technical expertise. And so that's people assume you have that, whether you're working in a consulting environment or just working with different clients that might be um, your client within your company or something like that. So I think where actuaries who differentiate themselves are the ones who are able to effectively communicate, who are able to take those complex things that we as actuaries work on and try and simplify those down into a manner that is understandable for a non-technical audience. Uh, when I think back to my days working as a consultant before I joined the Society of Actuaries, I worked in pension consulting. Well, many of my clients were human resource managers, and those people don't tend to be analytical people. They tend to be, very much people oriented in their mindset, and so they don't think in numbers. They think about feelings and impact on people and those sorts of things. So one of my challenges was to how do I communicate those important things so they can understand that. So that becomes even more important in this every um, complex world. And I mean, even in the context of the development of new areas of the way AI is developing. I mean, that and those related tools, it's important for the actuary to be able to take whatever's happening in what's viewed as a black box and be able to explain that to people. And if we don't have that skill set as actuaries, you're somewhat limited in your ability to really be effective as an actuary. Now, the question is how do you get that right? And I think it's a process, right? I mean, there's certainly some people are just maybe have greater skills, natural skills that way, but I don't think that has to limit you if that's not something that comes naturally. I think communication is something that can be learned for many people. So it's more just like you have to work on passing actuarial exams and that sort of thing. There's a similar work that can be done on communication skills and so those softer skills, often referred to as emotional intelligence and some of those things. The Society of Actuaries in our curriculum, we have added some of those components into our credentialing pathway. Ultimately, you can't test somebody on their communication skills, or at least not in a mass sort of context. But we do have components in our pathway that emphasize decision making, communication skills. We ask people as part of their final sort of uh, process before they complete their fellowship that they actually have to do a formal presentation at what we call our fellowship admissions course. So there's things where we're trying to emphasize the importance of that as a skill set. Other ideas certainly. If you're still in university taking communication courses, don't just take all the math and technical courses. Take a speech class. If you're in industry, there are certainly groups you can work with. I know I had colleagues who joined a group called Toastmasters, and I believe they have clubs around the world actually, and things like that. So there's always different opportunities. Look for opportunities to present to your colleagues to do other things. Apologies if you can hear my dog in the background. Somebody's rung our doorbell, so apologies for that. But yeah, a lot of different ways you can develop the skills. Join a community group where you're again, doing speeches or have opportunities to present. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be on a technical topic. Just getting experience in front of people is valuable.
Great. Actually, I will ask you the name of the dog.
Yeah, our dog is, we call her Toblerone for
Oh,
the Swiss chocolate bar. So that's,
great, great. I
she,
really love Toblerone.
yeah. We used to live in Switzerland for 3 years. So that's sort of the connection of the dog. Yeah. So, yeah.
Great.
I guess it shows that we're doing this live when we have the dog barking in the background, right?
Yeah, yes. It's really we are live and at home or at our office. All this stuff can happen. It's really part of the work.
Yeah.
And nowadays, interdisciplinarity is something too much discussed in the academic world, for example. So, how interdisciplinarity have been applied internationally in the actuarial field?
Can you give me a little more? What do you mean by the concept of interdisciplinarity?
Great. For example, to a lot of times the actuary, for example, he need to know law, the regulations, and he also need to know about mathematics, statistics. So, but sometimes people think that actuaries they only need to know about math. No,
Hmm.
it's much more. So a lot of times we have to put together a lot of fields of the knowledge, and then to be a better professional.
Yeah. All right. I mean, I would argue that the actual profession, by sort of definition, is an interdisciplinary field. If you look at, I've had colleagues who refer to us as as a borrowing science. We borrow from lots of different disciplines. So if you think about it, and look at our exam pathways and our credentialing exams, I mean, we have the core mathematics content, but even that, you're bringing in calculus and probability and statistics and those different kind of areas within the mathematics field. But then we require that you have background in economics, that you have shown us that you've taken a course in accounting and finance. We're bringing in investments, concepts, and a lot more, the whole area of predictive analytics and statistical risk modeling. I mean, there's just a lot of different things. So it's not, I guess the point is, it's not a pure science in a sense. It's a borrowed science where we are borrowing from a lot of different and applying in a very specific way. So I don't know that that's necessarily a new thing. I mean, that arguably that's kind of how we as actuaries have functioned for a number of years, a long period of time. Um, but but I think it's critical, and even, I mean, you mentioned law. I mean, part of a lot of what actuaries do is working. We work in many of us, not all of us, but many of us work in a regulatory context. Insurance is a highly regulated field. Even pensions, where I worked, was a highly regulated field. So as actuaries, we have to do a fair amount to really, understand the law and the regulations, and in some cases the tax code, um, and bring all those pieces together as what we're doing as actuaries. So it does take a certain amount of rigor and ability to research. I think actually, um, one of the strengths of what our exam process brings us is the ability to have a process of learning. Of course, it's important that you actually you know learn what is on the exams, but the process of studying and learning and finding what's important and synthesizing that information and being able to summarize it, that's also a skill set that we learn through the exam process that is part of that sort of interdisciplinary aspect, that then we receive a new problem, even if it's not something we've seen before, we can apply those skills to that new problem and do the research that's needed and find out the different elements that you need to look at and that sort of thing. So I do see that as, yeah, I mean, sort of core to who we are as actuaries.
And since you started as an actuary, what was the main change that the profession suffered? And talking about the future, how are the perspectives of the actuarial profession?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a lot of, I mean, technology obviously is just impacting what we do as actuaries. Um, it's been over 30 years since I started as an analyst, and I think back to my experience as an early career student, learning what it was to be an actuary and the process, and we worked in certain computer programming languages, and we did have spreadsheets when I was working. I know some colleagues I worked with who kind of didn't even have the spreadsheets when they started, but it was learning how to use some of the simple tools of Excel and those sorts of things. Well, now those things have magnified in whole new directions, so that, and just that the technology has changed what we do as actuaries, and the whole area of data science and predictive analytics. I mean, those are topics that are core to our actuarial exam syllabus now, that have only been added in the last 5 to 8 years, and are topics that I never had to learn about because of the way that things have evolved. So and now we have machine learning, and AI is of course the current buzzword and the hot topic, and a lot of questions and maybe some concerns about how AI will impact the future work of actuaries. But I guess I think the idea is that we need to look at these things as all as opportunities. Again, 30 years ago, or whenever, maybe longer than that, when people started using desktop computers, then it was, oh, well, we're not going to need as many actuaries. Well, we found different things to do. And the idea, well, AI is going to put people out of work. Well, it may in some regards, but the opportunity is to see what are the new things that we'll be able to do, because AI will allow us to think differently, or to automate tasks that otherwise might have been perhaps less enjoyable, and more routine, and leveraging on that, so that then we can find new opportunities for the profession. So well, I guess we'll see what happens in the future. But I think I don't believe the opportunities for actuaries will cease to exist because of AI or some of these new developments. Just what actuaries are doing in the next 3 to 5 years will probably look a lot different than what we as actuaries do now, or even 10 years ago. And so it's, how do we adapt? How do we adjust? How do we, as the professional associations and educators in the field, make sure that we're educating actuaries and credentialing them in a way that is relevant for the skill set that's needed today, and well, not just today, but for the future. So I think those are the challenges that we face as organizations, and as a profession, sort of globally.
Great. I will ask you just a minute to say to the public that I sent through the chat the link to confirm that the presence here in the event. Uh, Eu estou aqui fazendo essa breve menção aqui em português para avisar que o link da presença já está no chat da conversa, certo? Now returning to the English, I would ask you your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that there's great opportunities for the actuarial profession. You know, I think there's, you know, we're a small profession. I say that quite regularly. As I referenced earlier, I was just was on a sort of extensive trip. I traveled through India, through Kenya, the United Arab Emirates, and then Saudi Arabia, all in a matter of about 3 weeks. And in each place was meeting actuaries, meeting students who want to become actuaries, and that sort of thing. And one of the things when I talk, especially to prospective students, I like to really emphasize the value that actuaries provide, and really kind of the, I guess I might say, the societal purpose, the strong societal purpose that we have as a profession. You know, we're a small profession. The SOA has roughly 32,000, 33,000 members, credentialed actuaries. You know, if you add up, look at you know, the SOA and the other associations around the world, you know, I've heard estimates that there's probably only about 100,000 people around the world who are considered, we might be considered credentialed actuaries, at least, you know, defined by, say, how the International Actuarial Association might identify a credentialed actuary. Now that's really small. You know, when you compare 100,000 people as actuaries versus a profession like lawyers or accountants or doctors, I mean, that just, you know, we're like a drop in the bucket compared to those professions. Yet the work we do as actuaries to help individuals, help governments, help corporations manage financial risk, manage the impact of negative events through the insurance products we provide, through the, you know, the retirement products we provide, health insurance, you know, all of these things, just even in the core of what we do as actuaries, is providing, you know, we're impacting billions of people with a profession of 100,000 people. So, you know, sometimes people say, oh, well, insurance, that's not that exciting, or retirement, but we're doing good work and having a positive impact. And beyond that, then there's, you know, there's new areas where actuaries are working in climate risk and in sustainable insurance and in other data analytics, data fields, again, that have the opportunity to, again, use the analytical skills we have to do so in a way that has positive societal purpose, while still, you know, working in a career that can provide a good income and can be satisfying intellectually and stimulating intellectually and that sort of thing. So, you know, I've been an actuary for a number of years, and I'm pleased that was a career choice that I kind of happened into, but pleased that's been my direction, and pleased to work with the Society of Actuaries and really supporting the growth of the profession around the world. So I guess that's sort of my closing remarks. Happy to answer any other questions you might have, Fabio.
Andy, it was really nice to talk with you. Thank you very much to be here with us. And I have to say thank you to the public too. And then, well, that's it. Thank you very much, Andy.
All right, thank you. It's a privilege. Thank you for the invitation.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Have a good day.